I can't believe where I'm at right now. The Eddie Mata Show is on the road, and guess who's right next to me? We all know him. The villain that we love to hate. Cobra Kai's hit TV show. Martin Kove in the house. The Brooklyn boy. How are you, baby?
I'm fine. With an intro like that, God, you don't need guns.
Hey, what was that audition you had? Did you actually bring a gun and you pulled the gun right to them?
That was a long time ago.
All right, but what was it? It was funny. Go ahead, talk to me about that.
Well, this was a Chuck Norris movie, and it was the first year of Cagney Lacey, and I really wanted to do more on the show, and it was written for Cagney and Lacey, not Cagney, Lacey, and his Becky, which was my character. So anyway, I went to right after Karate Kid, I went to an audition, and they were shooting in Fiji, Finland, and New Zealand.
Ooh.
And with Chuck Norris, and it sounded like a good movie, and I wanted to go. And they offered it to me, and they said, "We want you to play this rapist for 10 days of the movie as villain." And I wasn't interested, And I said, "I'd like to play the lead bad guy." And they told my agent they didn't think I was unpredictable enough after meeting me. So I said, "Oh, really?" I said, "Okay, let's arrange another meeting. Do me a favor." And I got this prop gun. It was a prop gun. It's a prop 357 in this bag. I mean, we're going back now 20 years, 25 years. And I didn't know when I was going to pull this gun. I was just trying to be unpredictable, So the smaller guy, who was the producer, who was my biggest fan, he said to me, and I remember, I think the writer was Jerry Jameson and the director, I don't remember. And they were big fans. They were great guys. But the little producer said, he says, "We want you to do it. We want you to play this role of this rapist just like you did in Karate Kid." And I looked at him, went down into my bag, pulled out this prop 44 Magnum, put it under his chin, raised him above. He's scared stiff. The other two guys are laughing. And this producer, he didn't know what to say, and there's a pause. And then I said, "Don't ever tell an actor how to repeat a role." Put the gun down, put it in my case, walked out. At the door, I turned and opened the door. And I like these guys. I like the producer. So I looked at him, and I'm in a white suit, no shirt. And I said, "I hope, gentlemen, we can do some business." Closed the door, left. An hour later, they called my agent, and they offered me the part I wanted. But I would never do that now.
Of course not.
I could never do that now, But this was, I think, in the 80s, mid-80s, and it wasn't vindictive. It was just kind of, I had heard that there was that movie that Michael Moriarty did, and Richard Masur and another guy, I've forgotten his name, he's passed away, played the bad guys, and he also came in with a gun. This goes back, Nick Nolte's movie, I think it was called Dog Soldiers, or something like that. And and I heard that years ago, and I thought, we as actors go on limbs all the time. Sometimes you can do it, and sometimes you'll never, ever get the chance to do it because you'll be ostracized from the studio.
Right, exactly. So now, it was kind of not similar to the Karate Kid audition, but tell me about that experience. They gave you, and I know you told the story numerous times to other podcasters and hosts. I get it, but I want my viewers to really listen to this, and it really helped you get the role.
Well, it's really interesting because actors, to me, part of it is luck, part of it is talent, and most of it's tenacity. So, from the beginning, my friend Paul Koslow comes over in the house and says, "I just came for an appointment that you are perfect for." And I said, "Well, what is it?" He says, "This thing called Karate Kid." So this is like November of '83. And I called my agent, asked him about it. He says, John Avildsen did not like your 8x10. He didn't think you were right for the part. So I don't care. So I call my publicist at the time and I say, you know the casting woman? Can you call her and set up an appointment? He says, yeah, I'll call her. And I got an appointment. And she liked me and she says, here's the script you can show. He'll call you in like Friday. Today's Monday. So Tuesday morning comes. She calls me at 9 in the morning. He wants to see you at noon. I said, hey, I haven't even looked at this thing. And she says, well, it's now or never. So I'm really upset. And my ex-wife was my good friend, Vivian. She says, use the venom you feel for these people in this reading. And the reading was going up and down the dojo. Mercy is for the weak. Here and on the streets. Somebody, confronts you, they are the enemy. And use the venom you feel for these people. So I did, and it was interesting. I go to the reading. John Avildsen's there. And so is Caro Jones, the casting woman. And I just look at him and I say, you know, John, you're an asshole. We wait for years to meet directors of your caliber. We fire our agents, we fire our managers, and, just to meet guys like you. And here you don't give me enough time to prep. You're a real asshole. And so are you, Caro Jones. Mercy is for the weak. And I go right into it. He loves it. Sends me to John Avildsen. Sends me to Jerry Weintraub. Jerry Weintraub is 4 days late to the meeting. And Jerry's a big producer in town,
Mm-hmm.
Diner, Ocean's 11, all that stuff. So he comes 4 days late, so I do the same thing. I say, Jerry, you're a real asshole. I've been waiting on pins and needles to see you. And you're 4 days late to this appointment. And I say, mercy is for the weak. And I go in, stops me halfway, loves it, sends me to Guy McElwain, the head of the studio, and the rest is history.
Well, you didn't say that to the studio head, too?
No, I didn't, because he wasn't there. It was really a test with on a video with Pat Morita on the set. Mm-hmm. They had already started shooting. And so it didn't matter. If John liked it and Jerry liked it, then Guy was going to go along with it.
Yeah.
And he was a good guy. He actually left the studio, after that, left Columbia.
And
but
then
those are the things that, I could do the second one, but I would never, ever, ever frighten someone with the gun and all that, But I think, what it allows a freedom for the actor to take a chance.
Yeah.
And I think in this day and age, my son is so, he's so popular now, Jesse Kove, and his work is so good that he doesn't need to do that. I needed to do that to get into the instrument because I was so busy trying to be Steve McQueen. I was so busy trying to be cool. And, things like Karate Kid took me out of that. I don't know how, because he's a venomous character. But the most rewarding moments for me in my career were this last season, sixth season, where you see his vulnerability, you see him cry. That was, to me, the most satisfying moments in my career. Literally. How many years in the business? It took me 50 years to really work into that on camera,
Mm-hmm. Speaking of, what kind of actor are you? What did you study? Were you a Lee Strasberg? Were you a Stella Adler? Were you a Meisner guy? What kind of actor were you? And are you?
I had worked a little bit in each one of those.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a man named Warren Robertson who was wonderful. He combined the Reichian therapy, really wailing and have enormous releases. He combined that with what he learned in actor studio. And so he was able to, when you went up in class and did a scene, he worked with Viggo Mortensen, Susan Blakely. He had a lot of good people, and he was a good guy. And you would do a scene, and you would figure what was appropriate for the scene emotionally. You'd do it in class. Then he would tap into you and say something that would make you cry, that would make you have an enormous release. Whether he said, you're aware that you're overweight, or you're aware that your voice is not, you're not using your voice right, or, you're funny looking when you walk across the stage. He would do something that was so sensitive that you have a release, you start crying. And he'd let you go, and then he'd stop you, and then he'd say, now do the scene. All of this raw emotions were at your fingertips. And he was brilliant that way. And you did the scene. It was another scene. It was fantastic. Because no suppositions, no information that you thought this is the way it should go. Right. You just went with your gut.
Whatever, yes. Whatever.
And so that was the guy that was most effective. And then when I came to the coast, it was Milton Gonzalez. He was very good. I worked with Milton, who, did a lot of work in actor studio, but had his own style, and he was wonderful.
All right. So when you pick up the sides, right, back then, how do you break it down? Like, what do you do exactly, especially in cold reads too?
What do I do exactly? Yeah. I'm not very good in cold readings.
Well, the Karate Kid was a cold read.
Yeah, but I got some help there, emotionally. But in a cold reading, it's so hard. The kids today have to put themselves on tape. And sure, you can do several takes, but it's hard. It's so much easier to sit opposite Marty Scorsese. Sit opposite. I remember when I sat opposite Bob Fosse. I never even got the part. But with Bob Fosse, you're there. You're just, this cat has such a vision, he's just great. But it's much more enjoyable to go in a casting room and act, even though you only get one or two takes. I like it better. The personalization, But I was never good at, in fact, honestly, I don't remember the last audition I got. It's either straight offer or it's Karate Kid. I don't remember. I didn't read for Rambo. Didn't read for Wyatt Earp. Well, I did read for Wyatt Earp, so I guess Wyatt Earp was the last one. But I was friends with Kevin, so he knew, and Larry Kaz didn't like me. So, but yeah, I read for Wyatt Earp, so it would have been 1995.
That's the last time you auditioned.
The last time I remember succeeding at an audition. Now,
what about this? You actually called Sly and told him, "Hey, why do I have to read for this part? Come on, right? For Rambo." Is that the story with Sly?
You remember all this shit? Jesus Christ! This fucking encyclopedia you are.
Oh yes, I am.
No, that had to do with the newest Rambo. I called Sly, and I said, "Why do I have to read?" He says, "They know what I can do." And this is, 4 years ago? And, I got Cobra Kai, I got the series, but I wanted to do the movie, and I said, the head of the cartel, the guy could have graduated from the old Rambo into that position. So I call him up, and I get the voicemail. He calls me, he calls me back, and he says, "Marty," I'm dying on the phone. He says, "Marty," he says, "I don't think you should read. I think you're like me. You don't know how to read." And he says, I haven't even, worked on the middle of a script. It hasn't even been done, and it needs a rewrite. So I'll call you back. But, you don't have to read. I don't think you know how to read. I lost it. I just lost it. I thought it was worth the call, whether I got the movie or not. He's so funny, so creative, and he and I go back forever,
Hold on, I know you go way back, but tell me the story in Mexico at the nightclub with him.
Well, at the nightclub, Carlos and Charlie's, I think, in Acapulco, girls would come up to him and ask him to dance, and he would say no thank you politely, And then the boyfriends would come up and say, "Hey, what's the matter? You're not good enough? My girlfriend's not good enough for you?"
God.
And then you have a confrontation.
Right.
And, you know, and then I remember having to, the bodyguards lifted him up, you know, because we were about to get into a fight, you know, and it just, he's damned if he does and damned if he doesn't, you know. With me, it's different. I always wondered why no one started a fight with me over all these years to challenge the sensei. And I guess because my character is a little different. He's an underdog that rose to the top as a boxer. My character was like always, you got introduced to him as a champion, you know? So I figured that could be the reason. But, you know, he's very creative. We had a wonderful time, and you know, he and I go back to the early days when we had Kuno Spoonholtz as our personal manager in the early '70s. Sly would get jobs as an usher. I would get jobs as a Santa Claus in Abraham and Strauss. You know?
Wow.
I mean, this is the jobs Kuno Spoonholtz got us.
So you were struggling, man. You were struggling back then.
Well, yeah. I mean, struggling. I don't know. I've never had to take another job. Not that I made that much money. I think back in New York, I made like $14,000 was the biggest amount of money I ever made. And I was doing Lincoln Center, and I was doing regional theater, and I was doing Cafe La Mama, very abstract theater group.
And you did something in Detroit, right? Streetcar Named
Yeah.
Desire?
Well, that was the key that took me into LA. I got such great reviews in Streetcar. That was terrific. And it was a wonderful theater. And it was instrumental in my career. And 3 weeks later, I left and went out to the coast. You know, I sent out 110 reviews. And they were all good to all these casting people on the coast that I didn't know. And Glenn Larson, who at the time had Battlestar Galactica, he had Switch, he had McCloud, and I did a bit part in McCloud in New York. And I called him every month for 16 months. Should I come out? Is there something you can give me? And he says, "No, kid. You just, when you get here in the future, you just call me." I did, and he gave me a week on McCloud.
Wow.
First week in Hollywood, I got a week on McCloud. And, you know, and it was a bad guy. I did 8 TV shows and 3 movies in the first year, but all bad guys,
right?
But all fun. And I was, you know, wanting to do that because I was a novice in Hollywood.
Yeah.
You know.
But what about the Sean Connery story? You were his stand-in.
Boy.
And then 15 years later, you see him again and ask him, "Hey, you remember me?" "No, it was at a tennis court." Tell me that story.
Sean Connery was great. Sean Connery at the age of 9 was a milkman, had a part-time milk run. At 15, he had his own milk run. His father was a milkman in Wales. And he was a street guy. Sophisticated, of course, but great guy, you know. And I had gotten into NYU, and I had gotten into this classical repertory company. And I said to him, "Well, what should I do? Should I go out there and gamble and just take my portfolio and go out and walk the streets as an actor? Or should I go finish up a couple more years at NYU Film School?" And his answer was, "Young man, if you can do Antigone, you can do anything." So obviously go to the classics, done with school. So we had a great time. And he was great to watch because I learned how to listen. He was great to watch because he listened so well. It was really interesting. 15 years later, I got Cagney and Lacey. I did Karate Kid 1, Karate Kid 2. I bumped into him playing tennis opposite Fox on Motor Avenue.
Oh, yeah. That's Cheviot Hills, right?
Yeah, Cheviot Hills.
Right.
I would bump into him. He's looking for a game. And I say, "Sean, do you remember me?" He goes, "No." And I said, I was your stand-in in Anderson Tapes. He says, "Oh, okay." I said, "You want to hit?" He says, "Yeah." So he's hitting the ball. and he's hitting into the net. He's hitting over my head. He's not doing well. He has a bad back. He's not doing well. And he's cursing. And I'm dying. He's really, I can't say the words here, but he's cursing because he's missing the ball and he's screaming all the words that we scream when we've lost our temper.
Right.
And I'm dying. I start laughing. I said, here I am playing tennis with James Bond, and he curses just like I do. You know?
Right.
And it was great. You know, we became friends, and he's a wonderful, wonderful man and a great actor. You know,
he's awesome.
The Hill and all those things, Molly Maguire's, and all those things he did after Bond were wonderful.
So good, so good.
You know, and then when he finally gets an Academy Award in The Untouchables. You know, The Cat was good 20 years before that.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and what about Charles Bronson said, my favorite show is what?
Do you study these stories? do you go to sleep with a paper and dream about them?
I actually, you know, I take it in, Marty, like I'm taking you in as an actor. I'm taking you in, baby. I'm taking you in. So yes, I mean, listen, that's the best compliment, right? What did Charles Bronson tell you?
Charles Bronson was just terrific. We did White Buffalo in 1976. And I love Charles Bronson, and and I had pictures of The Magnificent Seven, The Great Escape, all this stuff. And I never asked for an autograph. I just brought the 8x10s in to show him. Another movie, When Hell Broke Loose. And he was funny. He didn't like what he looked like. But it didn't matter. He never went to his movies anyway. 15 years goes by, he's in Malibu, and I'm at a party, and I'm more established, and I go up to him and I say, Charlie, do you remember me from White Buffalo? He says, yeah. Are you still doing that series with them girls? I said, Cagney and Lacey? He says, yeah, it's my favorite show. 1986, 87, it's his favorite show. Cagney and Lacey, for an action star that did so much violence in most of his movies, it was his favorite show. So,
Well, you did you call your friends afterward? You wouldn't believe what I just...
I didn't really because he was so, he was a loner. So I just digested that, I really, like I digested Sean Connery, and, there's some stories you tell. Eventually I told these stories. But, Charlie Bronson was interesting because he went off to France, I think it was France, and did Rider in the Rain and became a star. And he left as a supporting actor, came back. And Charlie Bronson did all those Westerns in the 70s. He did, I think he did Gunsmoke, he did so many of those Westerns. So did James Coburn. And I did James Coburn's last movie, a movie called American Gun. And that was just fantastic. I mean, here's James Coburn, Magnificent Seven, Great Escape, Our Man Flint. And he was fantastic. And, he had a tough time with arthritis. But a great guy, guy.
Before, when you were auditioning, during the time when you were auditioning, did you have any actors that you were like, oh shit, there goes that guy again? Was there competition? For instance, at your type, as far as guys that are like you would go in and you'd be like, oh, this guy's here again.
Well, sometimes you wouldn't see your competition.
Okay.
But you would hear who got the part, and you'd say, oh,
right.
Sam Elliott got the movie Lifeguard. It was the first starring role I was up for when I got to Hollywood. And he got the part. And I always liked Sam. We both, acquaintances. I love the Westerns he's done. I loved, I think that one in Mel Gibson directed, he was terrific in We Were Soldiers, And his work is always good. 1883 that Taylor Sheridan wrote. Yeah. Sheer brilliance.
Oh yeah, he's the man. I
mean, Taylor writes brilliant.
Unreal.
And Madison doesn't get better than that.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I'd love to work for this guy just so I could speak his words. You know,
the writing is incredible. Marty, has there ever a time when you started getting offers? Was there ever a time you turned down the role and it was a huge hit? Did that ever happen to you?
Something worse. Steve McQueen was always my idol. He and Paul Newman. And I go to New York to see my parents. And the movie Tom Horn, his last Western, was casting. The night I get to see my parents in Queens, and there to see my parents, you know, and I get a phone call.
So is this like literally once you got off the plane?
Off the plane, in the apartment, I get a phone call. Marty, they want you to play Gentleman Jim Corbett opposite Steve McQueen. And it's a week's work, and you'll play this fighter, and it's all with Steve McQueen. So I just got to my parents' house, and I did not have the nerve to pick my ass up in the morning and fly back. My parents would have understood totally. They would have understood totally, but I did not have the nerve to do that because, you know, the only child, I love my parents, and I wanted to spend a few days with them. So I turned it down. Look, to this day, because my parents, you know, I told them about it, they would have understood, and I just come back after the movie. But because I didn't think about that, you know, I just said, I'm here. You know, these people have to wait. It wasn't a great deal anyway, financially, but I was going to work. The cool thing was I was going to work with Steve McQueen. And the interesting thing was I know he and I would have hit it off because we like the same kind of things. And it would have been fun to be friends with Steve McQueen. He had passed away, I think, 2 years later. And then I got a chance to work with his son.
Yeah, I was about to mention
Karate Kid, you know?
Yeah. You know, speaking of Karate Kid, at the end, how many takes did it take for that kick for William Zepka, Johnny Lawrence, to convince that he really got kicked?
You mean Billy's kick?
No. When Ralph Macchio kicked Billy at the end, and you know, and then, you know, LaRusso, the winner, this kick right here.
The crane kick, yeah.
Yeah. How many takes did it take? Because that is a hard shot to get in there to make it look so believable. And I think William did a great job for selling it. But, you know, after the kick, how his face went back and all that. How many takes did that take? Did you remember that?
Probably like around 10 takes. But you got to remember, the crane kick was an illegal kick.
Well, of course, yes.
It didn't come out that it was illegal till like 10 years later, you know. There was no such thing as a crane kick. And I always used to laugh how Billy was really the Karate Kid, not Ralph. And I used to talk about that all the time. And Billy did a great job. He did a wonderful job. You know, Billy and I, you know, we fought several times in Cobra Kai. And, you know, he's a better fighter than I am because he's fast. You know, I'm not as fast. But Billy was always, you know, he got his black belt. I went there when he got his black belt here in Tennessee. And nobody knew karate. No one. Except it was based on your talent as an actor. But Pat Johnson, the stunt coordinator,
he was the referee, right?
Yeah, referee at the end. He was Chuck Norris's partner in the tournament scene, in the 60s and 70s. So he was a major player in the world of karate. And he taught me alone for 2 hours a day, Miyagi and Ralph alone for 2 hours a day, and Cobra Kai kids alone to create the mystique. And if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have been as good as we were. And I didn't have a lot of action, but I had a lot of attitude.
No, but I love your attitude when Ralph Macchio comes in the dojo for the first time, and then like you're walking and you have that look like, welcome to my place, while you're speaking to your Cobra Kai kids. And the best thing, I mean, the worst thing for you that moment, you actually had 102 fever that moment, right? That scene.
Yeah, I wasn't well that day.
You were struggling, right? But it didn't feel like it. I was like, wow, that's believable.
But if Gene Kelly can do it and sing it in the rain,
yeah.
So, I don't know. You kind of, there were great moments. I think the really great moment when his wife walks into my dojo in Cobra Kai, and she walks into my dojo, and that's another good story. She had to slap me in the face, and she couldn't quite do it. She kept hitting too far away, and the camera angle wasn't good. She had never hit anybody before in a scene. And Courtney was her name, and she's lovely. And after her missing several times, I said to her, honey, just go for it. Hit me in the face. And she said, oh, no, I couldn't. I said, do it. We got to get the shot. And so she says her lines, and she winds up, and bam! And she nailed me, and it was great. Print, done, we moved on.
That the slapping scene, it's similar to Stephen Bauer from Scarface, because I'm really close with him. And he told me it took 23 takes for the girl to slap, because she was like, I don't know if I could. He's like, just hit me already. So how many takes did it take with you?
Well, she did like 4 or 5 takes, and it didn't work. She, would miss me. Only 1 take when she made contact. She felt funny after that, and I smiled, and the guys didn't want that take. Oh, she had to do it again because I smiled, because the character John Kreese likes female warriors. He felt she was a warrior. She came into my dojo. Ralph didn't, So
right.
What does that mean? And that's how I took it internally. And then the writer said, no, you can't smile after she hits you. It's too much, So I didn't. And I think she hit me again. That was it. It's fine.
When I talked to your son 5 years ago, Jesse, great kid, and I said, did your dad have a little John Kreese when you were kids? He's like, well, on the soccer field, yes. Now, is that true? You were cheering, you're like, let's go. And all the parents are like, oh boy, uh-oh.
You registered all this stuff. God. My daughter, Rachel, was a really good soccer player at Beverly Hills High School. And we would have code names. When she started to dance with the ball and she wasn't taking it forward, we had a code word, and it was called relentless. And so I would go to all the games. I would go to all my kids' games. I was doing Walker, Texas Ranger, a 2-parter, and I had a day off, and I flew right back for their baseball game. So for soccer, it was the same deal. So I'm screaming, relentless, Rachel, relentless, to give her a cue to get rid of the ball. And she comes up to me after the game. I'll never forget this. She said, Daddy, everybody knows you from Karate Kid, and you're making the girls frightened by screaming.
The Kreese came out, baby.
So, and he did. And so, but I was cheering. In NYSO, you can scream. The parents scream all the time. But in, high school or in club, parents aren't supposed to get wild. So I had to stop, But so you keep it kind of quiet. But my daughter was just a terrific soccer player, and she really, could have gone on to the Olympic developmental team and all that, but she didn't.
But your daughter's is it like a mental health coach?
Yeah, she's a good little therapist, and she has an 8-year-old, and but she wants to be 5 things. She wants to be a therapist. She's a really good writer. and she composed some music in this movie, the one we did that I produced. Jesse started. It's on Prime Video. It's called A Gunfighter's Deal. Mm-hmm. So she wrote some music for the movie. She's in the movie. She's a good actress, and she's a mother. So she's got 5 professions that probably take a whole lifetime, just one of them. But, you know, she's a great girl. And my son it doesn't get better. All weekend he was hauling crates of cats and dogs on an airplane from one location, Fort Lauderdale, to another one to distribute these dogs or cats that would have, you know, met a demise if they stayed in California, you know. So, you know, he's just such a good boy. And the fact that he uses his instrument 20 years before I did, he taps into here. And I had to experiment in different things with parts in order to feel that it was okay to just do Marty Kove. Because I was always trying to do Steve McQueen, you know, and Jesse never had that problem. At 30,
Jesse used himself
right far earlier than I did.
Well, then you're much more truthful that way,
you know.
By using yourself.
Yeah, of course, right. Absolutely. Yeah. But the kid can do. We did a Hallmark movie together, Taste of Love. He's a romantic. He's done comedy,
action,
and he's done action.
Yeah,
and he's great with guns and all. And he's like Harry Grant. He can do all 3 genres, you know.
So, you know, when you grab your collar, I love that look about you, right? And the Karate Kid, when you're watching, you're like, and then when you see Ralph Macchio winning, you're like, you put your hands through your hair, and you're like, this guy's kicking my boy's ass, and I don't like that, right? Yeah. So your actions, the physicality was awesome by you as far as playing that sensei, because it just showed in your body. You didn't have to say anything. We could tell when you were like, okay, something's going to go down here, right?
Yeah. You know, there was a time while I was doing Cobra Kai and I wanted to see if he ever smiled. So I sat there and watched, I think it was the 2nd season. I sat there and fast forwarded to every scene of John Kreese, and he never smiled. The guy never smiled. The only time he smiled is when Miyagi comes to the dojo and he says there'll be open season on him. And the line he smiles on, he says, I like that. I like that. You know, when he smiles, something in Miyagi said. But
no, was that the part when he said, "A little pushy bastard"?
But
I like that.
Yeah, that's right.
I like that.
You remember that too. Yeah. But you know, it was interesting that character was such a perfectionist that if his boys weren't winning, because he was really, you know, it wasn't out of ego. It was not an ego thing. John Kreese was a moralist, and if you didn't fight to win, you know, Miyagi-Do is different. Miyagi-Do, you win the point, the guy's down, it's done. You can walk off. My character is taught, if you win the point and the guy's down, make sure he stays down there. Finish him,
right.
You know, and that was the difference. And they're both strong. They're both good. It's just that, you know, you have to have black and white in a movie. My character was black and they were white.
Yeah. In Cobra Kai, I talked to John Horowitz the other day. I said, John, give me a classic story on set with Marty. And he told me, let me tell you something. He is extremely talented because this scene was tough. It's in season 6, and it's the episode you're on a yacht. You and a silver character. He was afraid that the boat was rocking, that you might fall. And is this true? This is what he told me. He had stunt guys holding your legs so you won't fall. And you had to deliver your lines, and it's hard to do when you're doing all this stuff, doing stuff at the same time and delivering your lines. It was a close-up shot, then it was wide shot. I mean, it was amazing.
We were trying to match shots, and when your boat's going like this, 20 minutes later, after you've done the master, and then it's going like this, nothing matches, and you want to get the shot to match. It wasn't that I would fall off because I was in the middle of the deck. Mm-hmm. It was that you wanted me to be still.
Oh, yeah, you don't want the helicopter shot.
Yeah, you don't want me to be moving. Mm-hmm. And so they held me for the close-ups.
Okay.
And they held my leg because I had to have one leg up. He forgot to tell you that part. I had to have one leg up, and to match something. But the great moment there was Terry breaks the bottle, mm-hmm. and he wants to come at me, and the boat is moving, and I do a spinning crescent kick. High kick over, one take. Kick the bottle out of his hand, the bottle goes flying into the water. It was unbelievable. And, they thought they'd have to have, with what's his name? Bloodsport, French kickboxer.
Van Damme?
Van Damme.
Right.
Van Damme, they use...
Thank you, Lawrence.
Van Damme, they use a foot, mm-hmm. and they put that on camera, and the foot looks like his foot. They couldn't do that. I had to really nail the bottle. So first take, I nailed the bottle, and everybody's screaming and yelling because it was really a high kick because he was up here with the bottle, mm-hmm. and so I kicked it. But, after that, it was just, we fought. We had a great time. We fought, and it didn't matter that the boat was moving.
So it was more about the still shot, I guess.
It was just more about the close-up. Mm-hmm. And the next day we shot where I didn't die. The boat blew up and you thought he died. But, the old adage is Cobra Kai never dies and neither does John Kreese. So you saw my hand with a cigar and my ring, and you saw me pick up a magazine, and the magazine said, "Whatever happened to Terry Silver?" And you cut. Mm-hmm. So therefore, you show the audience I didn't die in this giant explosion. But they did not use it because it was a little hokey that the very next day he should survive. Mm-hmm. So it was the whole sequence was really good. I enjoyed that.
Marty, was that your idea with the cigar? Did you add that in the storyline, or was it?
Yeah, I want. Oh. It's an interesting thing because when I first walk in episode 10. Season 1, mm-hmm. They knew I smoked cigars, and I had kept 3 Cubans with me because prop guys basically give you cheap cigars that I get a headache. So I did my entrance, walking in, the real story's only just begun.
Yeah.
Do the rehearsal, and I'm getting dizzy from this cheap cigar. So I went to my bag. I cut, for continuity purposes, I cut the Cuban into 3 parts. I hated doing that. And did the scene and hit my mark. The real story's only just begun. And I hear from the corner of the dojo, oh, all these sighs, and who they were all the writers and everybody sighing because after all these years, I was saying their words, mm-hmm. all the years they loved the movie. And 35 years later, everybody thought the character was dead. And here he was appearing. He's back. Yeah. And it was a catharsis. Did they know I smoked? I think they knew. That's why they wrote it in. Mm-hmm. They wrote it in. But now you got my prodigal sons, and they're as good as Cubans.
Oh yeah, this is actually an unbelievable cigar. How did this? When did this come out, Marty?
Came out about 6 months ago, And it's out of my partner's Paul DeSilvio, and he is
Bronx guy, right?
Bronx guy, and he's got a place Casa de Grande
On Arthur Avenue.
right in the Bronx, and he went to Dominican Republic and had the filler, and went to Nicaragua and had the rapper. It's Nicaragua rapper, and Nicaragua filler and the Dominican Republic filler, and it's smooth as silk. And we got rid of 1,000 boxes in
1,000 boxes.
3-4 months.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's just now we're going to be in New York for 4 different promotions in cigar lounges, and it's exciting because it's, the series I'm developing about a 12-year-old boy and an old gunfighter who's killed everything. Mm-hmm. They bond together and exchange human values, and it's a Western, and they go after the bad guy. And it's based on a graphic novel that I wrote, 4 different comic books, now in a graphic novel. And the guy came to me and says, why don't we do a cigar? Let it get really popular by the time the series goes. I said, okay.
And there it is.
There it is. And it's a lot of fun because that's about what the character looks like.
Yeah. What about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood? Tell me about that story, working for Quentin Tarantino.
Well, working for Quentin is sensational. The best director I've ever worked for. He's just like a big kid who loves making movies, and we shot this scene at the beginning. It was a little longer than what was cut, but you just have to be happy you're in Quentin's movies.
Oh yeah.
And he says, Marty, we got it, but I want one more. And he turns around to the crew and he says, and why? The entire 200 people, all in unison, say, because we love to make movies.
That's right.
That's the love they have for this guy, because he's just a solid, square guy. And that night, I gave him a double rig holster that was given to me by Sammy Davis Jr. Mm-hmm. And years before, I think it was in '77, I kidnapped Sammy Davis Jr. on a Charlie's Angels. And I go into his motorhome and he's fast drawing with his double rig. And I said, Sammy, I didn't know you were into Westerns. And, I love Westerns. And he says, yeah. He says, I really love all the Westerns I've done. And we got to talking, and he gives me his double rig. In the back it says Sammy Davis Jr.,
wow,
carved by Arvo Ojala, who made all those rigs in the 60s for those Westerns.
Holy shit.
So I figured, I had it on my saddle for 25 years. And I couldn't ever use it because it was a 29 waist. Mm-hmm. So
he was that thin, Sammy?
He was thin, yeah.
Wow.
So I figured if I had a great time, I'll give it to Quentin. So I give it to Quentin. He loves it. At the premiere, he comes to me and he says, did you see it? Did you see the holster? And I said, oh, yeah. And he says, yeah, I put it in the scene with Al Pacino in Al Pacino's office. And unfortunately, I didn't see it because I was focusing on something else. And then a week later, I saw the movie again, and I saw it there, And he's such a solid guy that he appreciates that kind of gift. He puts it in the movie because it's the memorabilia from real people, He's just terrific, He's got such good taste. He loves Taylor Sheridan, He can't wait for each one of Taylor Sheridan's because he loves him as a writer. So Quentin is, I would say the closest thing we have to John Ford out there.
Mm-hmm. Well, in Hollywood, from the 1920s to the 60s, there were like 2 out of 3 films were Westerns.
Yeah.
So that was huge.
1921 to 1967, 1 of every 3 movies released in Hollywood was a Western.
Right.
And it's an overexposed genre. So now you really have to have good writing, like in Cobra Kai. I mean, what are the chances of 3 actors from a movie 35 years earlier to go into a series, not only have the kids like it, but the parents live through it because they were the kids' age when they saw us do it back in '84.
Yep.
Becomes a phenomenon because it becomes a family event where everybody's watching it. And what sustains that? Good writing.
Excellent writing. I mean, John and his team, the writing is unbelievable. Even when you told John, hey, listen, if you want me on Cobra Kai, yes, I'm gonna do it, but I want to show vulnerability. As an actor, that's really hard to do coming from you because you always play that bad guy. And when you told him that, he's like, Marty, it's all written. I got you. Right?
Yeah.
So you were impressed with that.
Yeah, he wrote the arcs, he wrote the flashbacks,
Mm-hmm.
he had the redemption at the end planned. And, you know, that's all I wanted. I love vulnerability. I mean, I cry at supermarket openings, you know.
Did you cry when this was launched?
No, I cried. I tell you, but I do cry a lot, you know. And when I go to see a movie, and you know, if you watch 1883, you just sit there, you know, in tears. And Madison, you sit there in tears, and I like all that. It comes, the freedom now to feel extremely vulnerable is there.
Yeah.
It's, you know, it wasn't there 25 years ago.
But when it wasn't there 25 years ago, was it hard for you to do?
No, what was hard was charm. Doing what Mel Gibson does. What Cary Grant does when he's doing Arsenic and Old Lace and all that. The charm was hard. I don't know why. You know, it's not hard for me to be charming in a room, but to do it in front of the camera, that was hard. Vulnerability wasn't tough. They just never wanted it.
Right.
You know, they always wanted the tough guy.
But after the Karate Kid, were there parts that were, you know, offered? Well, you still were auditioning at that time too, right? Still, that was '84 after the Karate Kid. Now they were like, were you like, man, they just want me to play this villain again?
Oh yeah, no, in Steel Justice, there was a lot of things like that where I was the first action picture that I started. And then there were moments in Cagney and Lacey that were very tender, you know, and I enjoyed that. You know, I kind of, the 3 movies I've done this year so far, they're all lightweight stuff. There's no, and what I do now is I turn, more than ever, I turn the bad guy into more likable because it's a challenge, because it's more interesting to watch.
Yes.
And so over the years from Karate Kid, I learned how to turn the villain into a likable character as far as you can go with that, you know. And it was a great lesson. It was a great lesson to take those chances, to go for it, and feel satisfied. Because I never jumped into this game back in the '70s to be a movie star, to make a lot of money and be rich and go out to Hollywood. I just wanted to have respect from my peers, you know, and work.
Yeah.
That was it.
You know, when you were in college, were you like going to other colleges and auditioning for their plays, even though you weren't enrolled?
I can't believe all this stuff that you have in your brain. Wow. I must have told this story twice in my life. Yeah, I would audition for schools.
And you weren't even enrolled?
I wasn't even enrolled. If the university had a good drama department, I would go there. The one time I really got the part that I liked in a great play was Heartbreak House. And Heartbreak House was George Bernard Shaw. And I got the lead. And I went there at Hofstra University. And I went to first rehearsal, and there's a big black line right through my name. And I went to the director and I said, I got the part. What's the problem? He says, Mr. Kove, you have to be in attendance at the university to participate in our productions.
Oh.
But there were plenty of times where I got the part. Queens College, where the school was so big, it wasn't as cliquey, so you could do the play. But my school, Queensborough Community College, that I went to at the beginning, then I went to NYU and, other schools, they just didn't have a real strong drama department. So that's why I would do that. I don't know where I got the idea, but I just wanted to do better productions.
You got the idea because when you were a kid, you watched Golden Goose, and that stimulated you to become an actor.
Yeah.
And then you became a working actor. How many actors could say that? You've been acting in 6 decades, I'm assuming? 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000, 2010, 20. Yeah.
I guess so.
Look at you, man.
You don't think about it. You think, unfortunately, you think about the next gig. And then you have to take time, because this has been said to me several times. My oldest friend lives in Thailand. I know him since I'm 12. And he talks about that. And God was good enough at the age of 70 to give me that Cobra Kai. That now, you can't walk around. You can't.
So let me ask you this, Marty. Wherever you walk now, during Cobra Kai and after, right? You can't go nowhere, right? People will recognize you in seconds.
Yeah.
Right? Oh my God. You're the villain. Oh my God, Cobra Kai, right?
You could be eating. I was doing a movie down in Florida, and I'll never forget this, as I'm having this soup, a face came right in here. Oh, I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but can we do a selfie? Like right here. And some people have boundary problems. Others are cool about it. I go to Publix here, and you get every row. There's 3 people, that stop you, and I love the show, but they're cool. Mm-hmm. Some of them ask for pictures. But I went to the cigar convention this weekend, and I wanted to learn more about the structure of cigars, because I find cigars create a camaraderie. Mm-hmm, yeah. They do something that a drink, having a cigarette, or talking to someone from Brooklyn, all that camaraderie that happens is not like when we smoke a cigar. We can have it. You can be a total stranger, and we're going to talk about stuff.
Anything. Yeah, anything. Yeah.
So I love that, and that is number one. It's also elegant, because the English used to leave dinner, have a cigar and a port and a brandy, go in the drawing room, and just relax and talk about politics. It was noble. It was elegant. So I go to the cigar thing in cigar convention in New Orleans after doing 2 weeks in a movie. I'm burnt out, but I'm going there because I want to talk to Carlito Fuente, the owner of Arturo Fuente Cigars. Nice people, and they gave me 3 of those wonderful, ashtrays, gorgeous ashtrays. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to learn about the structure of cigars, tobacco, blending. I get there. They make an announcement. Martin Kove is here. I was at the booth where Epic Cigars invited me to sit and talk. A line 50 yards long. 5 hours I'm doing selfies. I have a big 30 minutes at 5:30 before the place closes to go and talk to somebody about structuring, blending. And it just comes with it, isn't it? You can't get uptight about it. Paul Newman never gave an autograph. He just never did. I don't know why. He just never did. Bronson didn't like doing it. Sean Connery didn't mind. And all the people I work with, they give an autograph. But to me, it just comes with the territory. I got a stack of fan mail here that I could show you. This big. Why does it come after the show is over? Who knows? Well, some of it came. And they got agencies that have my address now. You can't get off a list. And they send pictures, sign the pictures. They have shots of movies that they get from services where I Last House on the Left, or what was the other one that it was Last House on the Left, and another movie I did with Sly back in 1975.
I saw
Death
that.
Race 2000.
Yeah.
They have these pictures, and they're like, I look at them and I say, God, what's that? It's a terrible costume. I look ugly. My hair is dark. It doesn't matter. These guys love it, and they send it. So a lot of stuff comes from Europe. So domestically, I don't sign that much because you want privacy. But if the people spend that much money to send me pictures in an envelope, they spend $10, $20 to have me sign the picture, send it back, I will. You know?
Wow.
But, domestically, it's a little shaky because it gets too numerous.
Well, they appreciate your work. They appreciate your character. And now, did you ever sign and mail it?
Yeah.
Wow. What made you move to Tennessee?
Got a little tired of LA. It got a little too political, a little too desperate. It kind of outpriced itself in a lot of emotional respects. And here, you have what I paid for this, you'd get a house somewhere, a stucco house, And here, it is a nice trade-off. It's not as sophisticated as if you lived in New York or LA or Dallas or Chicago even. But the people are quite concerned and more compassionate about you as a human being.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with
And
that.
you still get stuck calling the doctor's office and you're in a rush. And she says, hey, is this Mr. Kove? My son played quarterback and I heard you played quarterback in high school. And they're giving you this whole dissertation and you got to get this appointment because you got to go.
Right.
That kind of stuff happens all the time. And you tolerate it. And the people they're kinder, But I still have to go back to LA and my son is there, my daughter's there, my ex-wife's there, my grandson, and you got to go and you have to even the diet,
Yeah, but a lot of actors left LA.
Yeah.
A lot of big name actors, including A-list actors. I mean, Sly left, Mark Wahlberg left. This is relaxing. But I think with the self-tape now for actors, it's tough because now people call audition from Japan, self-tape. Yeah. It's not like, if you want to be an actor, you either go to New York for theater or you go to Hollywood for film and television. Everybody's there. It's not like, well, I live in Missouri. No, buddy, you got to live out here. You got to live in Hollywood. So, but I agree with you earlier, what you said that, and I auditioned too, and I love auditioning in front of the cast and director, in front of people, because I'm an audience guy. I like that. You being now, were you a good athlete? You saying you were a quarterback. I didn't know that. I thought you played soccer.
I was a goalie. It was the closest thing, because my parents never really wanted me to play football. And a lot of Jewish parents have this thing about, you're going to get hurt. You're going to get hurt.
Is that true, Lawrence? 100%. There you go.
So the thing I would do is I played a goalie, and I was really good. I played the German-Hungarian League, semi-pro, and I loved tackling. And I was good. And it was the closest thing I could get to really playing football. And I played a lot of baseball. I was scouted by I think it was when they were the Houston Colts.
Oh, shit.
I got scouted by them. But I was always a good athlete, and my daughter's a terrific athlete. So is my son, but my daughter's even better. We used to call her the human vacuum cleaner because in Little League out in Tarzana, she would scoop everything up and play so well. And, it was just in the family, and I paid attention to it, and, when you give information about it, you can't help but talk about it. At the convention, cigar convention, I met Larry Holmes' son.
You did an event, right? We did an event with Larry Holmes. Yeah, go ahead.
1990, I'm booked to do 3 rounds with Larry Holmes.
Oh, shit.
Okay?
Oh, wow.
Now, my wife's expecting the babies that month.
Because your kids are twins, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I commit to this through a friend, charity event. And I go to Larry Holmes and I say, let's meet, do a little rehearsal. Because I don't want to get hurt, and we'll do a little rehearsal. He says, okay. So we book a rehearsal. A couple of hours later, he doesn't show up. So I meet him in the locker room that night, and I say, Larry, you didn't show up. We really need to rehearse something, because if I hit you and hurt you, you're going to nail my ass. And he says, don't worry about it, kid. You come at me with everything you have. I said, Larry, if I come out with everything I have, and you get nicked, you're going to get pissed off and take care of me. And he says, no. He says, it's not a good thing for me to hurt you. And I said, why? He says, because you're a legend in my house. That's what he says.
Wow, Larry Holmes. Look at that.
So I said, okay. We go out and fight. Tony Lobianco is in the judges, stand there. So is Sugar Ray Leonard. And they're screaming, come on, Sensei, nail him, nail him. I can't go more than a round and a half. I'm dying. I can't even keep my arms up. And he just kept me at arm's length. I never got a punch. I never landed anything. And it was unbelievable what I learned about stamina, what I learned about the boxers and what they have to go through and the training. Because I like training. I've trained as a boxer a couple of times for movies, and it's great. It's great for your skin. It's great to sweat. But what they learn about stamina and what you have to do. Here I was. So I started doing splits, rock and roll splits on the mat, just entertaining, being, somewhat silly, because I had no energy. I couldn't even keep my hands up, nothing. And it was a great experience. It was a great bit of knowledge. So I bumped into his son at the cigar convention, and I told him the story, and he says, I know the story. My father's told it many times, sweet guy. He's got a cigar lounge,
Is that in Pennsylvania? Yeah.
No, it's I think it's in New Jersey. I don't know.
Okay.
I think it was New Jersey.
In Karate Kid, in the beginning of Karate Kid 2, right? That was actually filmed in Karate Kid 1, right in the beginning when you were pissed at Zepka because he lost. When you hit, did you really punch the window?
I'm supposed to go through the window and about an inch away. Mm-hmm. It's supposed to shatter, so it looks like you go through it. So the charge is set in the door, and it never went off. It got wet. I don't know. It never went off, and I punch and punch and punch, and it would hit the glass. So finally, after a few takes, I said, "Whoa, I got to just lunge, eliminate the lunge, which makes it a more powerful punch, and I'll just punch." So I stood my ground, and I just snapped and punched, and he swore to me it would shatter. Well, it never shattered. Wham! I went right through it, and I come out and shards are sticking in my wrist and everything. Oh. And so, they new skin me, and an hour or two goes by, and I try it again. John Avildsen says, "Give it another shot." So I go, wham! Snap. I hit the window still. Thank God it doesn't break. I go a little slower. And I turned to John and I said, "John, this is the hand of Martin Kove. This is not the hand of Arnold in the Terminator."
Right.
He says, "Okay, that's a wrap." And they kept that scene. And it's just one of those things that happen to you. I'm lucky it didn't cut veins and all that. Yeah. But, it's just part of the game,
Any roles that you didn't get became a hit, that you auditioned for, you're like, oh my God, I can't believe this?
Well, I think Lifeguard back in the 70s was a good movie and people liked it a lot. Sam did a great job. I think there was parts in Monty Walsh that Tom Selleck, and I read for that. Also in Geronimo, I read for the Duval role, and that was a good movie, really good movie. There are probably others that I don't remember. Most of the movies, oddly enough, because I thought about that when they came out, this is the part I read for and all, were not successful. I don't know why, but many more were not successful than successful. Trying to think of if I no, most of the time after, they were offers. So you either turned them down or you didn't turn them down. And if you turned it down, then you didn't care. But there was, I'm sure there was Westerns. Well, Kevin and Larry wanted me to play this guy, Ed Ross, at the beginning, at the movie where, it's a pivotal scene where he feels his power and he throws a cue ball in my throat and all. And a couple of scenes with Kevin. And I wanted Virgil Earp. And Larry calls me and he says, Marty, I want someone really strong for this scene. It's a pivotal scene in the movie where Wyatt Earp feels his power. And I say, yeah, but I want Virgil Earp. He says, no, I need you to do this. So Michael Madsen got Virgil. And later on we did a movie together, Michael and I. May he rest in peace. And he said to me, that movie was the nemesis of my career. I would have given my thigh to play Virgil Earp. With Gene Hackman and Steve. You're in the gunfight at the OK Corral. Even though it's a different kind of movie than Tombstone, it was more of like a trilogy of the Corleone family. It was more about the family than Tombstone was about Tombstone. It's different movies. And to be part of that, I cried when I left. There's another crying. I cried when I left the set of Wyatt Earp. I did not want to leave. I was there for a whole week. I didn't want to go. You're working with Kasdan. You're working with Kevin, who loves Westerns. You just having a great Taya Leone, bunch of people. You don't want to leave that. That's what you love.
Oh, yeah. Why would you want to leave? Yeah. And what about the Oakland Raiders? You used to hang out with the Oakland Raiders?
When I got to California, my orthopedic doctor was their trainer. And Dr. Rosenfeld. And he would invite James Garner and myself to the field all the time. And had a great time. And I got be good friends with Kenny Stabler and John Matusek, madmen. And I had a ball with them, just a ball. And I think that was the time when they were in Oakland. So I became friends with several other guys. And they were just a lot of fun. That whole era. And I had never been part of football, pros. And it was my intro into that life, and what I always secretly wanted to be. So you wanted to be an athlete first? I think, not on what is first, but every actor wants to be every actor wants to be a ball player. Every ball player wants to be in the movies.
Yeah.
I mean, you were right about the fourth grade Golden Goose. But as I got older and more mature, I really liked athletics a lot. But, I really liked the glory of soccer and the people. When I played softball, and it was the Broadway Show League, and every Broadway show had a team. And, Pacino was playing there, Newman played, and everybody released their anxieties playing softball. And one time, I played, very early I played, and I had a really good arm. And the ball drifted into Tony Lobianco's game. And it was, Tony Lobianco was pitching, and it was a well-hit ball. And I chased it. I got to the pitcher's mound of this field on the opposite side of where we were playing, and I pegged it in. And it was a brilliant peg, brilliant throw. And it was so long and fast that his bleachers, the people stood up and gave me, right? Including he did it. That night, I get a call from Tony Obianco saying, you know, Actor Studio has a team. Would you like to play for our team? And I said, oh, yeah. He says, we give out T-shirts and all. It'll be a lot of fun for you. And I hadn't started acting yet. It was 1969, I think. And I felt excited. I was going to be part of a bunch of actors. 30 minutes later, I get a call from Jim Jensen. Jim Jensen was an anchorman on CBS. Calls and he says, Marty, I saw you throw that ball today. He says, we have a team at CBS, and we'd like you to play for us, play center field. And I said, yeah, but Tony just called me and offered me, you know, to play for them. He says, Marty, we have a $35,000 budget. We give full uniforms, and we have a bus that takes us around to play on weekends. What do you say? so I said, oh, okay. You know, we'll do it. And I called Tony back, and he says, you made the right decision, you know? So it was, you know, so athletics was always part of the ball game. And in Hollywood, it was a little different. It wasn't, Central Park was Central Park. Broadway, you know, you played ball, and in Hollywood, it fizzled out because I really got off of my kids playing ball then. It wasn't about me anymore, you know?
Well, listen, Marty, first of all, I thank you so much for having me here. Seriously, you were a man of your word when I met you in December. And you had a great career, still going, still working. You're living it up, man.
It's interesting, you know, the thing I'm trying to do now is raise enough money for this prequel. There's like two projects you want to do, the Prodigal Son series, but this movie is a prequel to Tombstone, written by the same people. And it's the story of Doc Holliday and Wyatt Earp meeting before they go to Tombstone. And it's really good. So my son was cast as Wyatt Earp 2 years ago. They want to make it like a $700,000 movie. I said, no, man, this is so good. Let's just wait. I'll try and raise 7 to 10 million, and we'll make this a movie that people will go see. And so we're in the midst of that now. I've raised about 4.
You raised $4 million?
Yeah.
Wow.
And my son will play Wyatt Earp. There's not even a role in, unless I invent it, there's not even a role in there for me. But I want to go out producing a movie like Tombstone, a really terrific Western, so that the kids can understand the genre, can get into it. The series will be a little easier for the kids to develop a simpatico to the genre. But, you know, the movie could be really hot. And it's well written, and it's the story of this monster, Doc Holliday, and Wyatt Earp, a straight shooter, how they love each other.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, it's a love story like Butch and Sundance.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's what I want to do. And then I got to get a couple horses here, and got to get an old, you know, English bulldog right here, not have him go anyplace, just have him sit there and, you know, just look at me, I look at him. I don't need a fat dog to run around. And that's what I want to do, you know. And, you know, it's just one of those things. You get a good woman and have a good cigar, and you just try to live life with integrity and honesty. And you know, you say that now, but then something will come my way, a comedy that I'll get a chance to do. These last 3 movies I did were pretty funny. But, you know, for a movie to get out there is a miracle. Yeah. Everything goes to streaming, and then who knows? You got to make it a really good movie, because everybody's taste now is so sophisticated. Kids are so sophisticated, and they're busy with their phones all the time. You got to really pull it out of them. You and I loved Red River, The Searchers, The Wild Bunch, Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. We all have our list. But today the kids don't have a list because they're not drawn into the genre.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
And that would be a great legacy for me, to draw the kids into the Western and have them appreciate it. Because it's hard. It's hard. Special effects and, all this post-apocalyptic stuff, It's all based on... I watched Monarch last night, 5 or 4 episodes. Monarch, The World of Monsters, I think it was, with Kurt Russell. Really interesting. I mean, a lot of Rodin, a lot of Godzilla in there, but it was written well. Not a lot of monster stuff. It was written well about if this really happened to us, if these beasts came out of the center of the earth. And it was fascinating because the writing was legitimate.
Yeah.
So kids are more locked into that. Because I watched it just to see what it was like. For, because of the taste that the children have today. And there's a lot to compete with. Because all that special effects, AI, you got to have a good story. You got to have The Searchers. You got to have Red River. You got to have things that make it, like Butch and Sundance. They make a difference.
Yeah. Marty, how old are you going to be next year? March 6th.
You really want to know?
Come on, man. You're living it up, man. Come on.
80.
80 years old. Still going. Still going.
March 6th, baby.
March 6th.
March 6th.
Any plans for your 80th?
Well, it's the day the Alamo fell, March 6th. And of course, I wasn't born in 1836. But, I think it'll be interesting to, everybody want to throw a party. It'd be nice to throw a party here. But I'd love to, honest to God, throw a party at the Alamo. That's what I'd really like to do. Throw, party at the Alamo. I don't know how I'll coordinate that. But, there's a movie I wanted to see that's it's on Prime Video, I think. It's a Davy Crockett story. It's a new one. So I'm going to watch that. But, those people, that was heroism. 150 against 5,000 Mexicans.
Yeah.
That's heroism. That's what's so wonderful about Texas. Texas I'm metaphysically attracted to that state because of March 6th. So I love going there. And whenever I do a Comic-Con or something there, I always have a driver take me down to the Alamo. I don't give a shit if it's 2 o'clock in the morning. I will just walk around and cry. And that's it. It's like they're very fortunate to have that kind of heroism culture there,
Well,
you are the human encyclopedia, man. You are really out there.
Thank you so much. Seriously, I really appreciate this. And, I'm just a huge fan of yours. I even, 6 years ago, when I was talking to John, you saw that video. I said, I love Martin Kove.
I sent him that video that you sent me, and then he sent me back a text, and he says, it's my favorite video of all time.
There you go. Well, that's Martin Kove, baby. Still keeping the water running.
Thank you, my son.
Thank you. You're the
Take
best,
care of
baby.
yourself.
All right.